All right, well, good morning to the media, ladies and gentlemen of the media. My name is Tyler Swanson, and I serve as the Youth in College. Yes, I serve as the Youth in College Field Secretary for the North Carolina NAACP. Today, we stand on the shoulders of Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, who was a founding member of the NAACP. Today would have been his 148th birthday. Not only is that a very historic day, but we also, moments ago, just delivered a letter that we will give you all copies of, demanding public records of the hiring of Margaret Spellings and the firing of Tom Ross. This was a very closed deal, backdoor type deal that went on, and the public was not aware of this. So we want to know what the real deal is. We know that they've been having various meetings and going behind closed doors meetings, and we just want to know what the truth is. So momentarily you'll hear from students and faculty and our attorney to explain this process. And this is the first step in making sure that democracy and justice is brought back into our education, because we know that Mrs. Spellings has a very interesting background. She served as the Secretary of Education under the George W. Bush's administration, and under her tenure as the Secretary of Education, she ushered and authored the No Child Left Behind, which we know was very detrimental to higher education. So we'll hear from Rebecca Barber, who is a student from North Carolina Central, followed by Kiara Campbell, a student at UNC. Then we'll hear from faculty forward members, Dr. Alta Cravey, Dr. Jarvis Hall, and then we'll hear from attorney Al McShirley, and then we'll open up to you all for questions. So, Rebecca.
Hello, everyone. I'm a student at North Carolina Central University, and I'm also a representative of the Youth in College Division of the NAACP. W.B. Du Bois once said, "Education among all kinds of people always had and always will have an element of danger and revolution, dissatisfaction and discontent. Today, as we honor Du Bois on his 148th birthday, we lift up his legacy of a long view destination for healing God's human family, his legacy of trailblazing Black journalism which amplified the dialogue against white supremacy, and most importantly, his advocacy for a well-rounded liberal arts, dynamic education, and its accessibility to Black people. Despite attacks by right-wing extremists, we have worked long and hard to uphold Du Bois's legacy and implement the NAACP's victory, Brown versus Board of Education, which we are still fighting for today. The UNC Board of Governors' decision to fire Thomas Ross and hire Margaret Spellings are historic decisions that need to be carefully examined by its constituents and the entire South. We want to recapture our education's element of revolution and critical thinking, and ensure that those who dictate the framework in our liberal arts system have our best interests in their hearts. Otherwise, they will be met with, as Du Bois once said, dissatisfaction and discontent. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kiara Campbell, and I'm a senior at UNC, and I'm here representing myself and students from UNC's Campus-wide Center for Social Justice. We at UNC do not support the hiring or the administration under Margaret Spellings. This is a woman who very clearly has a record of for-profit. She wants to turn our education system into a for-profit system. And I came to UNC to get an education. I came to UNC to get a liberal arts degree. And I've grown as a holistic person because of my education at UNC. And I believe any privatization of any type of education system is not going to allow other students to get the same opportunity. So I'm asking others in the community, my fellow students here, and anyone to fight the hiring of this woman, who especially was hired in a very undemocratic process. The BOG and the individuals who hired her, as well as Margaret Spellings, has not been held accountable for her actions or even held accountable for students or faculty over the system that she's going to be administrating over. So I'm not here to support this, and I'm asking you all to stand here with me and do the same thing. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Alta Cravey. I'm an associate professor here at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm a member of Faculty Forward, and I'm proud to be here today. Margaret Spellings talks about students as customers. She does this repeatedly, and this is indicative of the ideology she holds that education is a private thing and not a public thing. And I'm here to tell you that I work at UNC proudly because I see education as a public thing. Margaret Spellings talks about accountability quite a bit. She has pushed throughout her long public record, she has pushed performance-based metrics, performance-based funding, and she's talking about metrics that can be done at a quarterly term, just like capitalism, just like capital. This is what she's all about. You can see this also in the fact that in her first act as president, she hired the Boston Consulting Group. This is just one example of her long record, and I would say of her many conflicts of interest. She talks about accountability, but Margaret Spellings must be held accountable, and this is the group that can do it. This is the day that's going to happen, because no one has been holding her to account. And if she's going to be the leader and talk about accountability, she, of course, and other leaders must be held to account. If I can be fired for a conflict of interest as a faculty member, then Margaret Spellings should be fired for a conflict of interest, or for the multiple conflicts of interest that we've identified. She, just to go back to that example of the Boston Consulting Group, how can a for-profit firm that she hired to do this research study from an anonymous donor, how can they be held accountable to the public? To go back to that word she loves so much, accountability. This is not to say more about BCG, Boston Consulting Group, this is not the first time wealthy individuals have used BCG to force their educational agenda onto the public. In 2012, BCG was paid $1.4 million for a study of the Philadelphia public school system, titled Blueprint for Transforming Philadelphia's Public Schools. It subsequently received another contract with $1.2 million. These funds, too, came partly from, quote, anonymous donors, channeled through the William Penn Foundation and the United Way. As a result, a plan of considerable public significance was contracted with minimal public scrutiny. The subcontracting of education policy to a private for-profit company is all the more troubling because BCG is hardly politically neutral. BCG embraces a highly partisan conception of education, one that is consistent with the views of Spelling, George Bush's former education secretary. Specifically, BCG's Philadelphia plan selected as many as 60 schools for possible closure, aggressively promoted charter schools, identified private companies that could replace the district's unionized labor force, and tied school success to inflexible achievement goals. This is what is going to happen if you call students customers and if you put performance-based, short-term performance-based metrics at the center of the way you make decisions in the university. It will not be the university we know and love and that North Carolinians created over time. Thanks for being here, and I put a lot of hope and faith in NAACP Youth and College Division and their leadership and this action today, that this will hold Spellings accountable.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Jarvis Hall. I've taught political science at North Carolina Central University for over 2 decades. I'm a member of Faculty Forward, and for years, I worked proudly with Reverend Barber and Attorney Al McShirley and the North Carolina NAACP on an array of social justice issues in the state of North Carolina. Today, I come to express my concern about what is going on in the University of North Carolina system. This is a system that has a proud, though imperfect, history of educational excellence. It is a system that is distinguished from other highly regarded higher education systems because it has one of the strongest group of HBCUs that has served the state and the nation in spite of overwhelming odds. But I feel that North Carolina's HBCUs are under siege more now than ever before. The challenges come from all sides, but unfortunately, we must report that challenges are coming from the very system that they are a part of. The challenge is the apparent corporatization of higher education in our state. Now, HBCUs are not against change. In fact, HBCUs have been at the forefront of change for decades. But change must be fair and equitable and take into account the role that racism has played in the chronic and enduring under-resourcing of these institutions. The corporatization of higher education is not the change that needs to take place. The corporatization of higher education cannot take into account how the dedicated students, faculty, and staffs have made a way out of no way since the dark days of Jim Crow. The corporatization of higher education cannot adequately factor in the contributions that these institutions have made to the social, cultural, economic, and civic fabric of the communities that they serve. The corporatization of higher education cannot completely comprehend how, against all odds, North Carolina's HBCUs have for years produced more than their fair share of the doctors and the lawyers and the artists and the nurses and the engineers and the architects and the scientists and the social scientists, the historians, the educators, the librarians, the writers and musicians and others that have made their mark on their corner of the world where they live and work. The corporatization of higher education cannot quite grasp how these institutions, now as before, have been able to take highly motivated, highly anxious young people who wanted to learn, changing pages, to be educated, who were themselves the products of also under-resourced public schools. They have been able to take them in, nurture them, train them, expose them, so they crossed that graduation stage and they were ready for the world and a big hug, a huge hug from Big Mama. Indeed, the corporatization of higher education will miss all of this because it is an approach to higher education that is based upon ill-conceived evaluations and assessments that turn a blind eye to all of these things. Yes, change is important, but again, it must be fair and equitable. And important, it must be done with transparency, with much needed input from the students, the faculty, and the staff of our beloved institutions. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alicia Sutton. I am a student at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. I am also a Common Cause Fellow through the HBCU Student Action Alliance. I'm here on behalf of all HBCU students to address these newly implemented programs that are harmful to HBCUs, such as the NC Guaranteed Admissions Program, which would greatly affect enrollment at HBCUs in North Carolina, the lowering of tuition at Winston-Salem State, Elizabeth City State, and Fayetteville State, which would lower the revenues at these respective universities, and the name change of Fayetteville State to UNC Fayetteville. I'm also here to address the undemocratic appointment of Margaret Spellings, who was appointed after the UNC Board of Governors forced out former President Tom Ross. Ms. Spellings has had a long history of advocating for programs and policies that corporatize public higher education. Her appointment and these newly implemented programs are a sign of the dismantlement of HBCUs here in North Carolina, as well as the dismantlement of the UNC system. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. My name's Al McShirley. I'm a civil rights lawyer from Chapel Hill, and I'm a lawyer with Dr. Barber and the North Carolina NAACP. Today, as you witnessed in the lobby, we served Miss Kathy Schoenhut with a document dated today, Dr. Du Bois' birthday, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, and you're welcome to get. We'll email you copies. We have an emailer here today. But let me just read some of it to give you the sense of it. Most of our members, the Youth and College Division, are students or alumni at the 17 campuses which the people of North Carolina have built with our taxes, and in the case of the HBCUs, with our sweat equity. The magnificent University of North Carolina. These 17 islands of ideas, civil discourse, intellectual renewal, and development have been the source of much of the greatness of North Carolina and its leadership in Southern education in the difficult task of eradicating the badges and incidents of slavery and Jim Crow. Anyone who is paying attention is aware that a growing consensus across the university and its public has developed about the methods used by a caucus of the new BOG, the Board of Governors, in violation of the spirit and letter of the state's open meeting laws. We speak, of course, of the backroom firing of BOG President Thomas Ross and a secret political society hiring of what appears to be a woefully unqualified Texas political operative, Margaret Spellings, to replace him. How and why these two decisions were made must have a full public hearing. And those of you in the media know that even some senators and people want to know what went on one time, but both the General Assembly and the media have sort of let this drop, this research on that. The NAACP, as you know, when we get hold of something, we hang on. The people of North Carolina, through our Constitution and statutes, have delegated to the BOG great power to ensure the intellectual and moral heart of our state continues to broaden and deepen our democracy. The powers delegated to the BOG, however, are not absolute. And this is the essence of this request. We also pass laws, that's the people, over at the People's House, to prevent a small band of ideologues bent on stealing rather than guarding our state treasure, to at least conduct their thefts in broad daylight. This ensures that voters would know through our media, that's you, and our watchdog organizations like the NAACP and Common Cause and Faculty Forward and all the people that we represented. As you know, we represent 200 partner organizations, that there will be no burglaries. A burglary is a nighttime robbery, and that's what took place here. The open meeting law states in part that the BOG meets solely, this is directly from the statutes, solely to conduct the people's business. That's the only reason this organization is here. That's the only reason they meet, to conduct our business. It is public policy of North Carolina that the hearings, deliberations, and actions of these bodies be conducted openly. That's a quote from the general statutes. So when we reviewed the processes followed by the BOG when it fired President Ross and replaced him with Ms. Spellings, we believe a majority caucus was convened that violated the spirit of the open meetings law. This is what we're trying to ferret out. We believe this caucus secretly met in person, electronically, and by phone to make decisions in an effort to avoid the strict sanctions of the open meetings law. We remind you the law defines an open meeting as a meeting, assembling, gathering together at any time or place in the simultaneous communication by conference, telephone, or other electronic means of a majority of the members of a public body. Those of you that covered city and county things, you know what I'm talking about. There's 7 people. If 4 of them meet, that's a majority caucus. Of course, we understand that purely social and informal gatherings are not necessarily official meetings, but the statute itself says these gatherings cannot be called or held to, quote, evade the spirit and purposes of this article. So if these people meet over at Civitas and have a drink or two and decide whether they're going to hire Margaret Spellings, that's not cricket. Because the BOG's 2 decisions last year were shrouded in secrecy, we, the NAACP, believe the spirit and the letter of the open meetings law were violated in several instances. Therefore, we are asking today with this request, we are asking for the full and accurate minutes of all official meetings, including any closed sessions held pursuant to GS 143-318-11. Such minutes may be in written form or at the option of the public body, may be in the form of sound or video and sound recordings. The media, I hope, will join us with this public records request. You all have every right to ask for this stuff. When a public body meets in a closed session, it shall keep a general account of the closed session, etc. I won't read you the whole law. It's an excellent law, and it's designed to promote democracy, not burglary. And let me jump to the end. We've asked for, can you get that, Reba? We asked for 4 separate forms of documents. And the last one I think is most interesting. All information provided to the BOG and the staff when it considered the decision about Ms. Spellings, about the nature of her close association with Karl Rove and others who participated in the efforts to prevent damaging information about George W. Bush's short stint in the Texas Air National Guard from 1968-1972 from reaching the public. As many of you know, Ms. Spellings' husband, Robert Spellings, was involved in both helping George Bush get that controversial appointment and in covering it up. If you have any questions about the information we seek, please contact us immediately. Please email, etc. We'll give you copies of this on your email so you can look at it. I just wanted to close by saying before we open up for questions that the NAACP is like Dr. Boyce. He would be at, 140 years old today?
148.
And we are 107 years old. We have a way of doing things, as some of you have learned over the past few years. We don't go off half-cocked. We want to know exactly every piece of information we can get out of this. They, of course, are probably going to say some of this is personnel matters. Everybody in the media knows that's their favorite dodge. These are more than personnel matters. This goes right to the heart and soul of this university. So a judge will decide on that, whether they can keep this from the public. That's number one. Number two, we are representing the Youth and College Division because they have the most to gain. They are the impacted people in this, and the teachers, the faculty. But we also represent the North Carolina NAACP. That's over 100 local branches. We have youth and college chapters in practically every one of these 17 campuses and those that aren't a part of the UNC system. But they also, as this direction, educational direction that they take here goes, that will affect every young person in the state. So we feel a great responsibility. We will be reporting to our winter meeting, which is meeting this weekend on Friday and Saturday. We're giving Mickey Michaud a big award on Saturday night, and we will be reporting to the national NAACP that we are a part of, which has over 500,000 members across the country, and we'll be asking them to take a direct interest in this case. Okay, any questions?
Margaret Spellings, a little more than a week ago, was at the Board of Governors retreat in Greensboro. When she was addressing the Board of Governors, she got a little bit choked up talking about the recent demonstrations. that would happen at Board of Governors meetings. And one of the things she said was that when we asked her about that and the impact it's having on her, she said that she really is looking forward to the opportunity of sitting down with students, faculty members, the people who are opposed to her hiring and hearing them out and learning from them. If you had an opportunity to sit down and talk with her right now, what would you want to say? What do you want to know?
Well, we are in the process of studying her whole history. She has been hired to be head of a very important educational institution, and we're particularly interested in her background as an educationalist and her background as a political operative with Karl Rove for many, many years before she was appointed to the the Department of Education. So when we finish our study, which is not going to take us long, we hope to include all the stuff that the Board of Governors gives us as in response to our request today. We would love to sit down and talk to her. And we want to bring in, we would like to have all of you all there when we do it. We see this as an educational opportunity. Many faculty members are joining with us to try to begin this study. And Tyler, you want to answer that question?
I currently agree with what Attorney McShirley has said. It's yes, we just want to understand. Someone who has a bachelor's degree, who's being paid $775,000 to govern this group. We want to know what her interests are and how is she going to be able to move this education process forward, because North Carolina has the best education. And so we're interested to see what her plans are and how she can grow in this process. But we're just really interested to see this connection that they have here, knowing the Art Pope and the Koch brothers and Karl Rove, just understanding that information.
Go ahead.
I would also want to know if Ms. Spellings knows that North Carolina has the most HBCUs in the country, and how would she address what she's planning on doing about the future of HBCUs in North Carolina?
Anybody else up here wants?
With regard to the HBCUs, the plan that seems to be moving forward, or moving at least, or being discussed in Raleigh, seems to be emanating from the legislature prior to Ms. Spellings' arrival here in North Carolina. So I'm wondering if you're talking to them or what you would like to know about that plan.
We want to know not just about what Ms. Spellings is planning to do, but also the Board of Governors. The Board of Governors over the last few months have been taking several actions prior to Ms. Spellings even been hired and prior to her coming here that have been very questionable and detrimental, we think, to the interests of North Carolina's HBCUs. So our questions would be not just for her, but also for the Board of Governors, especially their commitment to this strong and rich system and heritage of HBCUs here in North Carolina, what they would do to reinforce their survival and their advancement.
Can I just point out one important thing? The Board of Governors, these 17, the members that govern this whole 17 body are appointed by elected officials, the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the Senate. So it's a direct correlation. It shows that if you don't vote in elections, this is what you get caught with. So we're holding both powers accountable, because when we skip these elections, we're seeing that these extremists have taken over the General Assembly. They're taking over education. So we're just here to let them know that our education is not being sold to the highest bidder, which is Karl Rove and those other, and the Koch brothers. That's that one thing that we want to point out, that it's important to make sure that this primary that's happening, we need to make sure and push that out and get out there, because you can attack the Board of Governors all day, but if you're not attacking them in the booth, then you're not necessarily doing so too much. So we want to get them both in the booth and out here in the streets as well.
Yeah, I skipped over in the letter that we did. I skipped over what you reminded me was we've asked them to provide us with this information as soon as possible, because the voters, as you know, are voting on March 15 for these state legislatures. We have stopped them. The NAACP and others have stopped them on the congressional districts, as you know, and we'll stop them on these, but not by March 15th. So what we have is this self-fulfilling prophecy that's going on, that people who were unconstitutionally elected, we know that now, have done a whole attack on the public school system in North Carolina. They're the same people over there as are in here. I call them the majority caucus in this thing. And they are running the show. And they are getting the money, and they're paying for this attack on public education in North Carolina. And this is part of that. So what we want to do when we come out with our whole thing, we want to be able to give everybody the facts. We hope the media joins with us. This is the biggest story in North Carolina right now, and it's the story that needs to get out there before people go into the voting booth, so they know what's going on. They pulled off a burglary here, and nobody has charged them with it.
It sounds like it may be kind of equally shared, but does the concern originate more with Spellings or with the process from the Board of Governors, from your perspective?
Well, we'll be able to answer that better when we get the documents that we've asked for, and the emails and all the stuff back and forth from Texas and from Republican operatives around the country as to what Margaret has done and how she's going to help push forward the obvious agenda of the far right here in North Carolina, which is destroy our public school system. Vouchers, unaccountable charters. I like charters, but not if they're going off with private people and stuff like that. That's, if anybody's been paying attention, should see that that's the theme, is you have to dumb down the population in order to get them to vote for somebody like, well, I won't mention names, but some of these candidates that are out there now. You have to have a dumber population, and that's the aim.
I'll also answer that question as well, as far as whether we have an issue more so with Spellings or with the entire process. It's a matter of both, but for UNC students, a lot of us, we have more of an issue with the process. You're hiring someone to represent us, to represent our needs, to fight for us, and this woman doesn't know us. She doesn't have an education and background. She doesn't know what students need. She doesn't know what it's like being on a campus. She's not even a previous educator. So how can she represent me as a student? How can she fight for what I need? And she doesn't know what I need. She doesn't know me. She doesn't care about us. She cares about the interests who put her in that power. She cares about corporate interest, and she cares about making money, and that's what she's good at, and that's what she knows how to do. She doesn't know how to take care of me. So we have a problem with Spellings and her background, and we have a problem with this process in general, especially with BOG. A lot of them, even them, they don't have backgrounds in education. They don't know what we need as students. So I'm tired of them making decisions for myself and for my fellow peers, and y'all don't even talk to us. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, brother.
I did want to also ask, and whomever wants to answer, there have been some people who've been a bit critical of the type of demonstrations that have happened at recent Board of Governors meetings. And I'm just curious if anybody would have a response to that, and if we have Spelling's first meeting coming up next week, what we should expect moving forward.
Well, you know, we are aware that students are out here organizing, and we're not trying to get involved in these organizational methods or demonstrations. We're just concerned about the Board of Governors and what they're doing and how they are not representing the students. And we will be there on March 4th when she's presiding over the meeting at Fayetteville State. And we're going to have perhaps teach-ins at Fayetteville State. And we would love for you all to join us, but again, our concern is Margaret Spellings and the Board of Governors.